When an archaeologist falls in love with the man funding her expedition, she realizes he's not just searching for artifacts, he's searching for the truth that could destroy empires.
Have you ever had that moment where everything you believed about yourself turns out to be a lie? Where the person you trusted most became a stranger in front of your eyes? I'm living that moment right now, and I'm about to tell you exactly how it happened. But first, you need to understand that nothing in this story is what it seems. Not the archaeology, not the man, and definitely not me. My name's Yuri Park. I'm an archaeologist from Vancouver, and 3 months ago, I was living what I thought was my life. Teaching at UBC, dating a guy named Derek who never quite got my passion for history, eating my mom's homemade kimchi on Sundays while she complained about my choices in Korean. Everything was predictable, safe, boring as hell if I'm being honest. Then came an email that changed absolutely everything. The email arrived on a Tuesday evening. I remember because it was late October, that weird time when Vancouver can't decide if it's autumn or already winter. I was in my apartment on Commercial Drive, the Korean neighborhood that felt like home in a way the rest of the city never did, making bibimbap, the rice sizzling in my stone bowl, the smell of sesame oil and gochujang filling the tiny space. My laptop was open on the counter and I wasn't really paying attention when the notification pinged. Another generic subject line, exclusive archaeological opportunity, UAE. I got these all the time, usually spam from institutions I'd never heard of. But then I actually read it. Dear Dr. Park, I've followed your work for years. The message was personalized, specific. This person knew about my dissertation on pre-Islamic Arabian burial practices. They knew about the paper I published last year that most of the academic world had overlooked. They knew about my specific expertise in something I'd been told my entire career was too niche, too obscure, not commercially viable enough for serious funding. I believe you're the only archaeologist capable of understanding what we've discovered. I believe you're the only one who can be trusted with this. That last part should have been a red flag. Looking back now, that entire email was basically a giant neon sign screaming danger. But at 29 years old, feeling stuck in a career that wasn't going anywhere, in a relationship with a man who wanted me to be someone I wasn't, I didn't see danger. I saw possibility. The email came from someone who signed themselves as A. Hassan, representing what they called the Al-Qamar Foundation, based in Abu Dhabi. We're conducting a private archaeological expedition, highly confidential. We need your discretion and your expertise. We're prepared to offer significant compensation and complete access to materials that haven't been published in academic journals. This is the kind of opportunity most archaeologists never get. They were right about that part at least. I should have asked more questions. I should have run a background check on this foundation, looked into Hassan's credentials, checked with colleagues to see if anyone knew what was actually happening in the UAE. But I didn't. I was too desperate to believe that something extraordinary was finally happening to me. So instead, I responded to the email asking about specifics. What kind of site? How long would the expedition last? What level of secrecy were we talking about? The reply came within 2 hours. Hassan explained that they'd discovered a previously unknown tomb approximately 40 kilometers south of Abu Dhabi, dating to somewhere between the 5th and 7th century CE. The burial chamber contained artifacts suggesting connections to multiple civilizations, Arabic, Persian, possibly even Korean trade routes that most historians didn't even believe existed that far east. He didn't explain how they'd found it or why they were keeping it secret. He just asked if I could be ready to leave in 1 week. I told Derek I was taking a sabbatical. I told my department chair that I had a family emergency in Korea and needed leave immediately. I told my mom I was going to meet some relatives in the Middle East and would explain everything when I got back. All lies. I was too embarrassed to tell any of them the truth, that I was abandoning everything for a mysterious email from someone I'd never met for an opportunity that sounded too good to be real. Maybe that was my first mistake, lying to everyone I loved. The flight to Dubai was long enough for the reality of what I was doing to start sinking in. Somewhere over the Pacific, watching clouds stretch endlessly below me, I thought about how crazy this was. I was getting on an airplane to meet a stranger in a country I'd never been to, for a job I knew almost nothing about, doing work I couldn't talk to anyone about. On paper, it sounded like the plot of a thriller movie, the kind where the main character makes increasingly stupid decisions and you're yelling at the screen for them to turn around. But I wasn't turning around. I kept flying. Hassan picked me up from the airport in a black Range Rover. He was younger than I expected, maybe late 30s, with sharp features and the kind of presence that made people look at him twice. He wore traditional Arabic dress, a crisp white kandura and matching headdress, but there was something that felt almost Western about his demeanor. He moved like someone who'd spent time in both worlds and belonged completely to neither. Dr. Park, he greeted me, and his accent was interesting. Arabic with an undercurrent of something else. British, maybe, or international school educated. Thank you for coming. I know this must seem unusual. That's putting it mildly, I said, dragging my suitcase toward the car. So where exactly are we going? He said south, to the desert, to a place that's been hidden for centuries. The drive from Dubai took hours. We left the city behind and entered landscape that gradually transformed from developed suburban sprawl to empty expanse. Hassan didn't talk much. He played Arabic music softly on the speakers and kept his eyes on the road. I asked him about the foundation, about his background, about how he'd found the tomb. He deflected every question with vague answers that somehow never actually told me anything. The foundation has been searching for something specific for a very long time, he said at one point. Your work suggested you might understand what we're looking for better than most people. That's really all I can tell you right now. That's not really all that much. No, it's not, but it's all I'm permitted to share until you sign the non-disclosure agreement. The NDA was thick enough to use as a weapon. I skimmed through pages of legal language that essentially said I couldn't tell anyone anything about this project under penalty of serious financial consequences and possibly imprisonment. It was extreme, but it was also the kind of thing legitimate private archaeology expeditions sometimes required. People with money to fund their own excavations often wanted to control the narrative before publishing findings themselves. I signed it anyway. The dig site appeared in the late afternoon when the sun was low and painted everything in shades of gold. It was more sophisticated than I'd anticipated. Not just a hole in the ground, but a carefully constructed excavation site with proper shading structures, equipment for documentation, even a small camp set up with tents for the team. There were maybe a dozen people there when we arrived, a mix of what looked like local workers and international specialists. Hassan introduced me to a few of them, but names went through my head like water. What actually grabbed my attention was the entrance to the tomb itself. It was partially excavated, the stonework visible in the sandy walls. But what made my breath catch wasn't the architecture or the age or any of the normal things that would excite an archaeologist. It was a symbol carved into the stone above the entrance. A symbol I recognized immediately, one that shouldn't have been there, one that made my hands start shaking. It was a Korean Hanja character, Pak, my family name. You noticed something, Hassan observed. He was standing beside me, and his gray eyes, yes, gray, which shouldn't have been possible, but definitely was, were watching my face carefully. That symbol, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Where is it from? That's what you're here to figure out, he said. That's the mystery we need you to solve, because that symbol shouldn't be here either, Dr. Park. But it is, and according to our researchers, it's been here for 1,400 years. I turned to look at him. That's impossible. Yes, he agreed. It is, and yet, here we are. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the tent they'd assigned me, listening to the sounds of the desert. Wind moving across sand, the occasional call of some animal I couldn't identify, and tried to process what I'd seen. A Korean character in a 7th century Arabian burial chamber didn't make sense. Korean kingdoms in the 7th century were isolated, focused on their own internal politics. International trade was limited. The Silk Road connected China to Persia and beyond. But Korea? Korea was off that route. Korea didn't matter to the Arab world. Except apparently it did, or it had, at some point that nobody had recorded in any history book I'd ever read. I got up and walked to Hassan's tent. Yes, I knocked on his tent at 11 at night, in the middle of the desert. In hindsight, that was another mistake, but I was too shaken to think clearly. He was awake, reading by lamplight actually, a thick book with Arabic text, and he seemed completely unsurprised to see me. "You couldn't sleep," he said. It wasn't a question. "That symbol is my family name, Park. I need to know what it's doing on that tomb." "That's the question that brought me here too," Hassan said. He gestured to the small chair across from him. "Sit. I'll explain as much as I'm permitted to." So I sat, and Hassan told me a story that changed everything. 20 years ago, my father commissioned a private research team to investigate something that had been whispered about in our family for generations. A legend, essentially. A story about a woman who came from across the world centuries ago and married into our family line. She came from a place called Goguryeo, which I believe was an ancient Korean kingdom, one of the 3 kingdoms. It fell in 668 CE. Yes, the woman's name, according to family records, was Hana Park. She was supposedly born around 650 CE, which would make her a teenager when she arrived in Arabia. No one knows how she got here or why, but she married a man from my family line, a trader named Khalid Hassan, and she had children. Those children had children, and according to the genetic tests we've done on our family line, that's exactly what happened.
"That's insane," I said. But I was already thinking about my own DNA, about the 23andMe test I'd taken last year that had flagged some Middle Eastern ancestry, something I'd never been able to fully explain given my family history. "It would be," Hassan agreed, "except for the physical evidence. The tomb we found contains a body we believe is Hana Park herself, and carved into the entrance is her family name, your family name, as a kind of marker, a way of saying this woman was from far away. The artifacts in the tomb match the time frame, carbon dating confirms it. Dr. Park, I believe we've discovered your ancestor. I believe Hana Park was my ancestor too." I stood up, paced the small tent. Why didn't my family know this? Why isn't this documented anywhere? "Because," Hassan said quietly, "histories written by victors don't always include the stories of women who disappear. And because your family, I suspect, has been keeping their own secrets about where some of their connections come from. I did some research on the Park family line. Your grandmother came from a very specific region of Korea, didn't she? A region known for its historical connections to trade routes?" I thought about my grandmother, about how she never talked about her own family, about how much of Korean history my mother seemed to refuse to discuss. "How did you know that?" "Because I researched your family tree before I invited you here. I needed to be sure you were descended from the right line. I needed to be sure you were actually connected to Hana Park. When I found out you were, I knew I had to get you here." "But why?" I demanded. "What does it matter if some ancient ancestor of both of us married 700 years ago?" Hassan stood up then and moved closer to me. "Because," he said, "whoever funded my family's research project, whoever is really paying for this expedition, isn't interested in the archaeology. They're interested in what we find inside that tomb. They're interested in something specific that Hana Park was supposedly carrying when she arrived in Arabia. And they're very, very interested in making sure you don't find it before they do." "What are you talking about?" I asked. But I already knew, somewhere deep in my chest, that this situation had gone from unusual to dangerous. The next morning, Hassan called a team meeting. He introduced me formally to the other researchers. There was Amira, a Saudi historian who'd been studying this region for 15 years, Marcus, a German photographer and documentation specialist, and several others whose names I immediately forgot because I was too busy processing that Hassan thought we were in danger.
The actual work on the tomb began immediately. It was methodical, careful, designed to preserve everything we found. Amira and I worked together, removing sand and debris from the entrance, while Marcus photographed every stage of the process. The work was physically demanding and mentally engaging in a way that calmed my anxiety slightly. But then we found the first artifact. It was a small carved object about the size of my palm, made from a jade-like stone that I recognized as having come from Korea. It was definitely jade, the kind that Korean artisans of that period would have worked with. In the jade was carved a figure, a woman, unmistakably, with long hair flowing down her back. The detail was extraordinary, the precision suggesting it had been made by someone with serious skill and serious intentions. "That's Hana," Amira whispered, looking at the carving. "That has to be her. She carved this herself, I'd bet anything." "Why would she do that?" I asked, but I thought I knew. People who found themselves in impossible situations, people torn from everything they knew and dropped into a foreign world, they sometimes left records. They created artifacts that said, "I was here, I mattered, I existed." We found more artifacts as we excavated deeper into the tomb. Jewelry with mixed aesthetic styles, Korean designs mixed with Arabic, clothing fragments that showed evidence of both cultures. But most interesting were the documents. They were in a protective clay container, and inside were what appeared to be a combination of Korean Hangul writing and Arabic script. "This is unusual," Hassan said, examining the documents carefully. He was fluent in Arabic and he could read some of the script, but the Hangul stumped him. "Can you read this?" he asked me. "I can read Korean, though historical Korean texts can be challenging. Let me see." I leaned over the documents. The Hangul was older style, but still readable, and what I read made my stomach drop. "It's a confession," I said slowly. "It's a letter from someone named Hana to someone named Park, to her brother. She's writing to her brother from Arabia. She's telling him why she left, what she took, and who's going to come looking for it." "What did she take?" Amira asked. I kept reading, my hands shaking. "She says she took something from her family, something valuable. She says she took it because it was the right thing to do, but that it would cause massive problems if her family knew. She says she gave it to the man she married, to Khalid Hassan, for safekeeping. She says that if the letter's being read, it means something's gone wrong. It means someone's looking for what she took. And she's asking her brother, thousands of miles away, to protect their family from what comes next." "What did she take?" Hassan asked. He'd moved closer, and I realized his entire body was tense. "No," I said, "and I don't think she could. Someone was watching her. Look, there's a second letter underneath this one. Different handwriting, different language. It's in Arabic, but it's not a formal document. It's personal." Hassan took the second document carefully. As he read, his face went absolutely white. "That's not possible," he whispered. "What?" I asked. "This letter," he said, "is from Khalid Hassan to his brother. It's dated after Hana's letter. He's confirming that Hana gave him something to protect. He's saying that yes, the rumors are true, and yes, it's hidden, but he's also saying something else. He's saying that the truth about what Hana brought to Arabia isn't something he can explain in a letter. He's saying that the only person who could understand it would be someone who looked deeply enough, who asked the right questions, who came from both worlds." "Both worlds?" I repeated. "Korean and Arab," Hassan said quietly. "He's saying that when the time came, if it came, someone would need to be born from both lines to understand what the truth actually meant. Someone who would have the right to know. Someone who would be able to handle what that truth revealed." Amira looked from Hassan to me and back again. "No," she said flatly. "That's not what he's saying. Tell me that's not what he's saying." "It's exactly what he's saying. He's describing us. He's describing two people born from both family lines coming together at a specific moment in history, finding this tomb. He's describing destiny."
Destiny, I said incredulously. That's not archaeology. That's fiction. I know, Hassan said. But look at where we are. Look at what we've found. Look at the fact that you exist, that I exist, that we were both drawn to this specific tomb at this specific moment in history. Could you have gotten here any other way? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say this was all coincidence, all luck, all random chance, but I was already realizing how improbable everything actually was. The email that had arrived just when I was most vulnerable to an extraordinary offer. Hassan's research that had somehow identified me as the perfect person to bring here. The way the symbols had called to me. The way the artifacts had made sense to me in ways they couldn't make sense to anyone else. What does the letter say? What's the thing Hana took? What's the truth that could topple kingdoms? Hassan looked up from the document. It doesn't say. Khalid says the truth is hidden. It's in a location he describes only as where the old stones speak to those who listen. He says future generations can find it if they're worthy. But he also warns that there are those who would kill to keep this truth hidden. He says that even in his time, there were powerful people who wanted to make sure this knowledge never spread. This is insane, Amira said, backing away from the documents. This is conspiracy theory nonsense. This isn't archaeology. No, I said softly. It's something else. It's a puzzle that someone left for us to solve. It's a message across centuries from a woman who was ripped from her home and forced into a new world, asking us to find something important enough to die for.
That night, Hassan and I sat outside his tent, watching the stars. The desert at night is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. The sky absolutely filled with stars, so many that you can barely distinguish the darkness between them. It's the kind of thing that makes you feel very small, very temporary, very aware of how much larger the universe is than your own problems. We're going to have to leave, Hassan said suddenly. Tonight, if possible. What? Why? We haven't even fully excavated the tomb. We haven't found the hiding place that Khalid mentioned. Because, Hassan said, I just found out who's funding this expedition. It's not the foundation I work for. It's someone else. Someone who's been using the foundation as a front. Someone with connections to organizations that don't tolerate people knowing things they're not supposed to know. Who? I demanded. I don't know, Hassan said. That's the problem. I don't know who I'm working for. And I've just started realizing how carefully they've been watching everything I do. How do you know that? Hassan pulled his phone out and showed me a message. It was from a blocked number. The work is proceeding as expected. The girl has found the documents. Ensure nothing else is discovered, or she will disappear. I felt the desert air suddenly seem very cold. We need to contact the authorities. With what? Hassan asked. We have documents that prove something extraordinary happened 1400 years ago, but nothing that proves we're currently in danger. And if we go to the authorities here, we have no idea if they're part of whatever organization is behind this. For all we know, they've been watching since I brought you here. So what do we do? Hassan looked at me and I saw genuine fear in his face for the first time. He said, we disappear. We take the documents and we disappear. And we figure out what truth was important enough for someone to kill to protect. We left the camp in the middle of the night, just grabbed what we could carry and drove Hassan's car into the desert darkness. I left behind my suitcase, my phone, my identification, everything that could be traced. Hassan left behind his entire life, the foundation position, the possibility of ever being part of legitimate archaeology again. We drove north, away from Abu Dhabi, and didn't stop until we reached the border with Oman. It was in Oman that Hassan finally told me the complete truth. We were in a small hotel in Muscat, in a room where we could see the ocean, and Hassan pulled out copies of Khalid's letters that he'd managed to photograph before we left. I've been researching this for 5 years, since before I even knew you existed. The foundation I work for, I thought it was independent, privately funded, but I found out 2 years ago that it has connections to a government agency, a very specific government agency that deals with historical artifacts that might have political implications. What kind of political implications? I asked.
The kind that could destabilize international relations. The kind that could prove that certain national borders were based on false premises. The kind that could prove that history, the official version of history that governments teach in schools and that people build national identities around, is completely wrong. What did Hannah take? I asked. I have a theory, but I need to find the hiding place first, the place where the old stones speak to those who listen. And I think I know where that might be.
He pulled out a map. There's an ancient site in Yemen called Marib. It was a major trade center in the pre-Islamic period. Multiple kingdoms had interests there. But according to some historical records, there was also a specific location near Marib where traders would leave messages for each other, carved into stone that couldn't be destroyed without collapsing the entire structure. It was like a dead drop system, but for permanent records. You think Khalid left the information there? I asked. I think, Hassan said, that it's possible. I think it's worth investigating. What I didn't know at that moment was that Hassan wasn't telling me everything. What I didn't know was that he had his own reasons for wanting to find what Hannah had taken. What I didn't know was that Hassan himself was connected to the very organization that was hunting us. What I didn't know was that everything, absolutely everything, was about to get infinitely more complicated. But that's exactly what happened when we found what Hannah had actually hidden. We made our way to Yemen carefully, hiding in small towns, never staying in one place long enough to establish a pattern. Hassan's training in security and evasion was clear. He'd had practice at this, which made me wonder exactly who he'd been working for before he became an archaeologist. Yemen was dangerous, politically unstable with various factions vying for control, but it was also the kind of chaos where two people could get lost if they were careful. The site at Marib was smaller than I expected, mostly ruins half buried in sand, but the stone structures that Hassan wanted to explore were still standing, carved with ancient script from multiple languages and multiple periods. Someone had definitely used this as a communication site. It took us 3 days of examining every surface, documenting every carving before I found it. A section of stone that had been deliberately carved to look like a specific kind of pattern, one that matched the decorative style in Hannah's letters, one that incorporated both Korean and Arabic symbols. Here, I called out. Hassan came over immediately, camera ready to document what we were finding. The carvings told a story. They were directions, essentially, a map written in symbols. They pointed toward a specific location, deeper into the desert, in a direction that led toward the coast. They included dates, numbers, measurements, and at the end of the sequence, there was one final symbol, Hannah Park's name in Hanja. She was here, I whispered. She physically came to this place and left a message for her family, for Khalid, for us. The message is pointing to coordinates, Hassan said, checking his instruments. Those coordinates are about 50 kilometers northeast, toward the coast. That's the middle of nowhere, I said. Exactly, Hassan said. That's where you hide something you want to protect. The journey to those coordinates took hours. We drove through desert that gradually started to show signs of civilization. Small villages, water sources, the occasional truck passing us going the opposite direction. Hassan seemed increasingly tense, constantly checking his phone, looking at the mirrors. We're being followed, he said finally. There's been the same truck behind us for the last 40 kilometers. I looked back and sure enough, there was a dark-colored vehicle maintaining a consistent distance behind us. What do? We drive, Hassan said, pushing the accelerator harder. We drive like hell, and we get to those coordinates before they catch us. The final location wasn't a building or a structure. It was a cave, half hidden behind a formation of natural rock that you could easily miss if you weren't specifically looking for it. Hassan parked the car as close as he could, and we ran for the cave entrance. And behind us, I could hear the sound of the other truck skidding to a stop. Inside, Hassan yelled, and we disappeared into the darkness. The cave was deep, cool, and absolutely filled with artifacts, not scattered around randomly, but carefully preserved in sealed containers, protected from the elements by what looked like ancient preservation techniques. There were documents, paintings, sculptures, jewelry, and in the center of everything,
one large stone tablet covered in writing. Hassan pulled it toward the minimal light coming from the cave entrance. "Oh my God," he whispered. "What?" I asked. "What is it?" "It's a record," Hassan said. "It's a complete record. A genealogy, a history, evidence of..." "Yuri, this proves that the official history of at least 12 nations is completely false." "What do you mean?" I asked. "These people," Hassan pointed at names and symbols on the tablet, "weren't who history says they were. There were trade connections between civilizations that officially never had contact. There were marriages, alliances, exchanges of knowledge that should have fundamentally changed the development of human civilization. And someone in power, made sure that all evidence of this was destroyed, except for this. Hana saved this. She knew that the truth needed to be preserved somehow." Footsteps echoed in the cave entrance. We weren't alone anymore. The people in the truck had followed us inside. Hassan grabbed my hand. "When I tell you to run," he whispered, "you run deeper into this cave. Don't look back, don't stop. There should be another way out. Places like this always have them. You get out and you get this information to the world. You understand me? No matter what happens to me, you get this out." "Hassan," I started, but he kissed me. Actually kissed me. Right there in a cave in Yemen with armed people approaching through the darkness. "I'm in love with you. I was in love with you the moment I saw your face in my research. I'm in love with you for everything you are and everything you're about to become. Now run." And I did. I grabbed the stone tablet, probably the worst decision for an archaeologist to make, but definitely the right decision for a woman trying to survive, and I ran. Deeper into the cave as gunshots echoed behind me. I don't actually remember the entire escape. There is a blur of running through darkness, of finding tunnels that seem to lead deeper rather than out, of wondering if Hassan had sent me to die in a cave rather than let me watch him die in it. But there was an exit on the coastal side of the cave system, and it led out onto a rocky beach with nothing but ocean visible in all directions. I emerged soaking wet and bleeding from a cut on my shoulder, carrying a 700-year-old stone tablet that definitely wasn't meant to be transported. I walked until I found a small village, and I somehow managed to convince a fishing boat captain to let me on his boat without asking too many questions. Money helped with that. Hassan had given me a credit card before we left Muscat, and apparently it worked internationally. That was 3 months ago. I'm in a safe house now, somewhere that's officially not anywhere. I don't actually know what country I'm in, and I've been instructed not to ask. The people protecting me are connected to an international organization that deals with historical artifacts of political sensitivity. They're treating me well, but they're definitely not letting me leave.
What they are doing is helping me verify Hassan's theory, and what I've discovered is that he was right about everything. The stone tablet, combined with the documents from the tomb, tells a story that, if released publicly, would fundamentally alter how humans understand their own history. It would prove that the official narratives of at least a dozen nations are false or incomplete. It would prove that there were connections between civilizations that no one believed were possible. It would also explain why someone was willing to kill to keep this secret. Hassan, I found out 3 weeks ago, is alive. He's being held by the same organization that's protecting me, though in very different circumstances. Apparently, he's not actually an archaeologist. He's a spy. Or rather, he was a spy before he fell in love with me and decided to help me escape. Before he betrayed his actual organization, the one funding the expedition, the one that wanted to keep these discoveries secret to make sure I got away with the truth. He refuses to see me. He says it's safer that way, that they might use me against him if they know how much he cares. But he sends messages through the guards, small notes that basically amount to stay strong and don't let them convince you the truth isn't worth the cost. The truth, as it turns out, is very complicated.
Hana Park's original motivation for leaving Korea wasn't what anyone expected. She didn't take the tablet because it was politically dangerous. She took it because it was proof of something she couldn't let her family know. Proof that her bloodline, the line of Korean royalty she'd been born into, had been built on lies. The true rulers of her kingdom were descended from Arab traders, not from the pure Korean lineage that was taught in official histories. She came to Arabia to find the truth of who she really was, and instead, she found love. She found Khalid Hassan, and together they created a family that was deliberately hybrid, deliberately mixed, deliberately built on the combination of two worlds. It was revolutionary for its time. It's still revolutionary now. The organization holding me is very interested in suppressing this information. They argue that releasing it would destabilize multiple governments, cause international conflicts, potentially create serious problems for people who've built their entire identities on false historical narratives. They're probably right about that. But they're also wrong about something more important. People deserve to know the truth about their own history, even if it's uncomfortable, especially if it's uncomfortable. So, I'm making a decision. The organization protecting me has given me a choice. I can remain silent, live out my life in comfort and safety, with no one ever knowing what I've discovered, or I can release the information, knowing that it will destabilize governments, destroy careers, force people to reevaluate everything they believe. Or there's a third option. Hassan sent me a message yesterday. We disappear. Not as prisoners, not as part of their system. We take what we found and we disappear to a place where they can't find us. We have a life together. We have peace. We let history work itself out without our involvement. I'm still deciding which option to choose, but I know this much for certain. Nothing about my life is going to be the same again. The woman I was 3 months ago, the one that got on a plane for an unexpected archaeological expedition, doesn't exist anymore. I've been broken down and rebuilt. I've been hunted and hidden, and I've discovered that love can grow even in the darkest circumstances. And I've learned that sometimes the real treasure isn't the artifact you find. It's the person you find it with, and what you choose to do with it together. The ocean is visible from my window right now. Somewhere across it, Hassan is probably looking at the same ocean. And somewhere beyond that, the rest of the world is going about their lives, not knowing that everything they believe about history might be wrong. I think I know what decision I'm going to make, but that's a story for another time.